I've got a problem with my TFL, my Tensor Fascia Lata, that's what the problem is. Now the TFL, the Tensor Fascia Lata, is a muscle that sits sort of slightly at the front end of the hip on the side and inserts obviously into your ITB and things, and it often gets a blame for a lot of different problems. It gets the blame for ITB friction syndrome, it can get the blame for patellofemoral pain syndrome, it gets the blame for loads of different things. And is this actually really true? This little muscle that sits on the side of the hip, is it really a muscle which is blamed for everything rightly? Or is it actually another one of these misnomers and it's not as simple as blaming one muscle? So here they reviewed 17 studies which included people who had problems that we've mentioned and others, arthritis and various things, and also people who didn't have any problems with their bodies at all. 8 of the studies looked at the size of the Tensor Fascia Lata, and 10 of the studies were looking at the EMG, so the electrical activation of the muscle itself. Now obviously we've got to be careful when we talk of a dysfunction of a muscle. Obviously EMG data shows how much activation the muscle has. The size is obviously the hypertrophy of the muscle. That doesn't involve maybe coordination, it doesn't involve maybe flexibility, and there may well be other factors that these studies didn't look at. Therefore we've got to be cautious with regards saying that the TFL isn't playing a role in any of these conditions. Overall, they found a minor, uninformative amount of information about the TFL causing problems and the link to these issues. Now, some of the conditions they looked at, you probably look and think ligament issues in the knee and arthritis of the knee and various things. You've got to be stretching, I think, for them to be linked, and it's understandable why they kind of link certain other things in there. So like the ITB inserts directly into the TFL or the other way around, and therefore you could imagine there's a link there, but they didn't find a link there as well. So if the TFL was electrically working well, activation was good, muscle size was good, then they didn't see that there was an issue with the ITB. And the theory before was like there's a weakness in the Tensor Fascia Lata, and therefore that is causing it to be smaller, less electrically active, therefore that causing load elsewhere, like the ITB or maybe greater trochanteric pain syndrome and things of that nature. Now it makes sense to think about that. This study or these studies don't necessarily show that link. But as we were mentioning before, there can be biomechanical things, there can be, activation, not activation, but timing kind of things. There can be coordination things, flexibility things as well. So it also doesn't account for maybe fatigue. So obviously if someone's, say, running or cycling or whatever, then when they're tired, then the EMG data might be different. And therefore there is a dysfunction at that moment in time. So we've got to be careful. I'm not saying the TFL should be blamed all the time. It could be relevant in certain cases, but certainly this study doesn't clarify if that is the case. It certainly doesn't show the link inherently, and it shows it probably gets blamed too much. But overall, it certainly is something to which you shouldn't necessarily rule out either. So anyway, next time if you think your TFL is an issue, maybe it's not. But anyway, that's it for this video, and I'll see you next time.